a series of events that, is going to shape the rest of your life as it's shaping all of our lives. And that how we encounter this are how, will we be like Winston Churchill, who, by the way, was kind of not a very significant political figure before World War II, and the challenge of World War II, and the fact that so many in England had to virtually live in fallout shelters for weeks and weeks. We forget about, the hardships of earlier generations. And he rose to that challenge and became a great world leader after having been somebody who, frankly wasn't all that impressive before that. An interesting biography for those of you who are interested in that kind of thing. But my point being that we all need to find that inner, Winston Churchill in ourselves, how we in our own spaces can be courageous, be those leaders, be those who say that this is a challenge that we meet head on, and that we certainly don't allow the pandemic to get in the way of our meeting our aspirations personally, our concerns that we want to address in the world at large, the reason that we're in public health, what we have the vision to want to be able to do to make the world a healthier place. We need to stay the course with that. There was never a more important time than during a pandemic. The School of Public Health, so we're pledging to you right here and now, we're going to deliver an outstanding public health and health management education, regardless of the format. This is going to be the best curriculum that anyone would ever receive. We're using the best practices for teaching and learning to put that across to you, and we will make full use of our location in Washington, D.C. to do that. The public health, the research, the policy agencies are all here, and maybe we can't bring the people from those agencies into our building to interact with you, but we know all of them, we're connected to them. We've been working with them through our educational programs for years. We will bring them into our virtual classrooms. We will bring them into seminars. We will provide you with that Washington experience wherever you are across the country. We will provide opportunities for research where you need that. And we will provide applied public health experiences. We're dedicated to all of that. And I just wanted to close on that note. I know there are a lot of questions, and I'll turn things over to the moderator too.
Yes, we have a lot of questions coming in, and so we are going to do our best to get to the questions that came in before, and also the questions that we have now. Dean Goldman, I'm going to be honest, from the sense that I'm getting from the questions, there definitely is a frustration on the graduate students' part, because some of them moved to campus, got apartments and got involved in spaces. Is there any, I don't know if we could really do anything about that, but what are kind of your thoughts on that? Because there's definitely a sense of wishing that this was made a month ago so they didn't move here.
Well, I have the same frustration, and I think in some ways you may feel it as a frustration with us for kind of the timing for making the decision, but I'm also focusing a lot of my frustration on the pandemic itself, one, for posing such a challenge to our society, but also, frankly, on our own response to the pandemic and the fact that our country has not been able to join together and all at once resolve to do the things that we have to do to bring the transmission of this virus down. And what I mean by that is that when in Washington, D.C., we shut everything down, in March and April and May, and then other parts of the country started saying, we don't need to do that. We're just going to reopen. We're going to let people do whatever they want without wearing masks. And now we see epidemics, and half of the country is red, just raging, with the virus. Well, in a sense, for me, the real frustration is that we are playing a game of whack-a-mole with this thing, and it doesn't work. You can't push the thing down here without dealing with the pandemic in the rest of the country, because it's going to pop its head up. And we are a global university. Our school draws students from all across the country. as safe as we feel right now in Maryland, DC, and Virginia, the country is not safe. Many of our students come from Florida, come from Texas, come from California, and we cannot envision how we bring everybody together in a safe way under that circumstance. And I should also say, and those of you who have come all the way already to Washington and you're living in Washington, and um, I'm not advising you, turn around and leave. I don't think this is a great time to be traveling. I don't think this is a great time to be moving. If you feel safe where you are, if you feel secure there, I would say stay there. I would say there may be economic opportunities for you. Some of that might involve telework. So then that's, you could do that from any location. But, all of us, our plans have been bollocksed by this. Consider, for example, many of my friends who work in healthcare at GW's hospital who have been working, literally day and night for months. And then suddenly there's the mayor's order that if you are coming back from one of 27 states, that you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. Well, what if your annual vacation is a week or two, in Delaware or North Carolina with your family? We're having to tell people they can't do that because we can't have them coming back from vacation and then being quarantined for 2 weeks and unable to return to work when we're in the middle of a pandemic where we may need them to be on duty to take care of people, which is not fair because that's what they've been doing all along and they haven't had a vacation. But on the other hand, who's making that unfair? It's the virus, it's the virus. I mean, and we could be mad at the mayor for establishing those limits, but what she's trying to do, I think, is take very sensible actions to protect her campus and to her community, as we're trying to do to protect our campus.
So I've worked at other institutions and still have friends in many other institutions, and I don't think we were necessarily a leader in saying we're going online. There were some schools that did it before us. I think there's a lot of schools that are still really trying to be open. And I think a lot of it has to do with financial reasons. So I do appreciate that GW's leadership listened to the public health advice and said, we're doing it. I think we're going to see a lot more schools closing between now and the beginning of school, like weeks before or a week or two into the school year.
I would say 2 days after we made our announcement, Georgetown announced the same thing. American University announced the same thing. And so we might have been in the lead, but we were barely in the lead. And I would guess they were already talking about it, or they wouldn't have been ready to make that announcement so quickly. I mean, I'd like to think they were just copying us, but I don't think that's the case. And I just think that most of us are coming to the conclusion that, despite all the practices that we can put in place, we have to have the transmission of the virus down at a lower level before we can feel that it is safe to be functioning. In DC, for example, I'll tell you, we've been very proud of our progress, but we're keeping the rate of transmission barely below 1, and sometimes it's going over 1, which tells me that we're teetering on the edge of, we could see another outbreak here. And I take that very seriously, that, until we see much, much lower transmission rates, a la what we're now seeing in places like Connecticut and New York, that it's hard to feel safe, but yet, we're a tiny jurisdiction that is right on the edge of a number of southeastern states that have huge rates of transmission.
Thank you, Dean Goldman. So we're going to talk about the money thing for just a couple more minutes because I don't think it's not. Someone asked me to do the math. I can't do the math right at the moment because I'm trying to read the chat too. I think one of the reasons why Dean Goldman thinks that it's a pretty close comparison, the graduate and undergrad, is the undergrad for the moment is just for this semester, where the grad discount is for the entire year. So your discount will go the entire year, which will be a similar percentage over time, I believe. But I have a little text out to our finance people to help me do some math too. The other piece, Dean Goldman, is some of our students did take classes during the summer. And the summer, do we know? Ooh, I think you're muted, Dean Goldman.
To something that it says in the chat window. Um, our price for fall was established like 3 years ago. We didn't like make a decision to raise the price and then make a decision not to. Our price, like our salaries, like everything else, ramps up every year with cost of living. So, and and people were already invoiced for the tuition at that price. And so people will receive an invoice with a tuition at a lower price. That's real. So I just wanted to say that.
Excellent, thank you. And Dean Goldman, do we know about what they're doing? I know I did inquire yesterday. I think they were still uncertain about the summer tuition, like the students who did pay the 1825. Do we know? Or do they? I don't think we know that yet. Okay. Okay, so the one thing that the students, I think kind of the way it was written, it got a little bit confusing. So it said like most programs will be online. If an MPH student is sitting out in the audience, undergrad student, all the classes will be online. Yes.
So let me tell you currently what we're looking at. One is that we have an MS in emerging infectious diseases. That's in our Department of Epidemiology, small program that involves a laboratory microbiology course. That one course has a face-to-face component. A very small number of students will be in that lab. You have to be in that program to be in that course. That's the first one. The second one is that we have a very small number of international students who are required to have a face-to-face education in order to be able to even be here, and in some cases to have the support that they get from their own countries. So we are offering an experience for them. And then the third thing is that there are a very small number of students who actually do laboratory research or other kinds of research with faculty, or or have some other need, absolute need for that kind of experience. And those people will also be kind of a part of the on-campus group. And then last but not least, whoever among our undergraduates is actually involved with resident. A lot of feedback. I feel wonderful. If there's somebody who wasn't muted, there, it just ended. Thank you. It was you. Okay. Now I'm going to invite you to speak again, though, Heather.
So sorry, Dewan. I wasn't really doing anything either. I was just standing here. One of the questions, I'm going to move over to some of the resources. If students live in the DC area, will Himmelfarb, like the library, be open? Would 950 be open if they wanted to study there? What does that look like? What does the building look like?
So the campus buildings are not going to be freely accessible for people in the community. Basically, the list of people who have access to campus will then determine people's GWID card entry, and there will be, more card readers than there have been in the past, on various buildings. And so if you're not on that list, and you won't be able to just come and go. Now, if you have some urgent need, for some reason to come and get something that's on campus, I know some of the graduate students have had offices, may have things that are in the building or one of the buildings that they need to go in and get. We'll be able to arrange for you to do that. But we are not going to be able to have people just coming in and out. Library use is going to be by appointment only. And there are very few people who need to use the library on an ongoing basis. We do have some people who do, but the library is working very hard. It has been doing this since spring break to make everything that can possibly be provided online available to you online, with a lot of effort and a lot of labor and a lot of, frankly, cost as well. They will, for example, the materials that they receive an interlibrary loan that if you need those kinds of materials that just are not available online, they have ways to FedEx them to you. They are going to work very hard to make sure that all of your needs are met. And that's also true. Some of the resources at the library, such as the writing support program and other supports that are there, they will be available online for people.
I know there was some mention of like COVID testing when we were originally opening. We were going to do a lot of different COVID testing. What's happening with COVID testing and antibody testing right now on campus?
We're staying the course with it, but we're going to have a much smaller population that we'll be testing. So starting in mid-August, those who are coming back to campus, we're going to test all of them, and then we're going to test them again 5 days later. Our epidemiology students and infectious diseases probably understand why. And then we're going to test them periodically. And so, but we're going to have to maintain a very strict list of who are the people who are on campus who have to be in the program. They will not only have, G World access, but their access will be dependent on their, staying in the testing, that they are showing up, that they're doing the testing, as well as some other things. We're going to expect people on campus to symptom monitor every day, and we will have the ability to follow up if anybody has symptoms. By the way, the Colonial Health Center is also going to be open. Student health will be open. And they are already doing a tremendous amount of their work, either counseling or healthcare using telehealth. But they'll be able to see people if need be. They'll be able to make the referrals that people need. People should feel that is available. I think the telehealth is available wherever you are. So.
One concern that some students have, students who may have different learning challenges, is how will like the classroom environment be with students who may have some learning challenges?
In terms of the
services, they would still go through DSS, and the services would be.
So you need to have for any accommodations, whether it's for an online class or a residential class, you need to go through the disability support services people, in order to document your need for the accommodations. But I think we've had a great track record in the Milken Institute School of Public Health with doing all kinds of accommodations. But we would look at any need and do anything that we could in order to make sure whether it's a testing accommodation or has to do with vision or has to do with hearing, whatever the challenges are, we want to try to meet you there and provide that assistance.
I did put up the DSS area where you can fill out a form. They also, like, if you experience illness due to COVID or family members, that's also a place that you can put that information in for help as well. So the calendar switched. We were starting, and then we were having Labor Day. I always get them mixed up. Labor Day off, and then so what's going on with the academic calendar right now?
So when we thought we were going to bring everybody back together, we thought that the wisest course of action would be to take Labor Day, the fall holiday, and the return after Thanksgiving out of the calendar. And we were asking our faculty to figure out how to change the curriculum so that, for example, exams would be done before Thanksgiving, but then there would be something else going on after that. The reason for that being that we do have to provide instruction for a certain number of weeks in order to meet our accreditation. So that was a difficult balancing act for the faculty. And frankly, for some courses, it works really well to do something like that. And for other courses, it was going to be difficult. And the minute that the decision was made to basically go all online, the faculty were united as one around the idea of going back to the original calendar, because it is just so much easier for them, to have those final exams happen, well, during the final week, and that's why you call it a final exam, maybe. So I understand that, and I think that has been quite possible to do. Um, you know, to a couple of the items in the chat window, in terms of the school's budget, the tuition reduction is actual. It is actual in terms of the fact that it is a fair amount of actual revenue that we were counting on, that we've been counting on for the last 3 years in planning this year's budget that we will not have. So it is real money. It's not play money. I know it may feel that way to you, but to me, it is real money because we're going to have to do a considerable amount of belt tightening in order to be able to do it. It's a real sacrifice for us. And that's at a time when the university, as you probably are aware, has a lot of financial challenges. I just want you to understand this isn't like this isn't like a little shell game. This is real money, and we're having to make real changes in what our plans are for the next year because of it.
I have friends, and I feel like a lot of the stress out about the financial piece. And I have friends who go, "Oh, you work at GW." They work at like smaller schools that, and they're, of course, we're all concerned about money, but I think there's this like impression, like we have all this money because we're GW. And so I trying to explain to them, I'm like, no, like, I mean, they're making really hard decisions about staff and all the technology. Dean Goldman, can you talk about some of the improvements and some of the, where some of the money went into in order to improve the technology so our students do have a good online experience?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I would say that our school didn't have to do a lot because we had already invested in great classroom technology. I mean, the 950 New Hampshire Avenue is a great academic building, and we built in wonderful technology. But we realized that we wanted to have a classroom that works in both directions. And if we are able to get back together again in spring, which I'm hoping we will be able to, and it's just a hope, at this point. But the ability to have a two-way communication, for example, if say we're bringing a guest speaker in and that person doesn't want to be present in the classroom, that they will be able to see the class while they're talking to the class. So, so this is a new kind of camera that we have bought for installation in our classrooms that would also allow, for example, if your professor is running, a face-to-face class and then suddenly falls ill or doesn't even get sick, but is just exposed to somebody who is ill and has to quarantine for a couple of weeks, they could still be kind of in the classroom with you, not quite a hologram like you might see in science fiction, but still pretty amazing that that person will be able to not only do this in a Zoom room like this and see your faces, but also be able to do this like from the front of the classroom and actually see the students in the classroom. And so we're going ahead and staying the course with installing all of that. Some of the rest of it, it's not really rocket science. It's really that we have for years already had an excellent online program. So many of our faculty have been fairly sophisticated, but didn't know how themselves to put a course online. We're very dependent on staff support and also we're not teaching live online. We're recording their lectures and then doing discussion sections online. And so some instruction needed to be done in order to familiarize them with taking command of those technologies, and that is a real, significant step forward. I will tell you, some of our faculty who swore to me they would never in their lives teach online, and because in spring break they had to pivot to it. We've heard feedback from the students. They did a great job. And some of them have told me, they've really changed their mind about online education. They really, really enjoy doing it. And I should apologize to all of you because I see another comment in the chat box about money, which is bedeviling all of us because it it is true that everybody is facing hardships. I mean, we are aware of that. We are aware of that. And that is part of what motivated us in terms of saying we would not take that we would roll back our 2021 tuition to the 2020 level.
I think a lot of our programs have these different requirements like practicum or culminating experience, IPE, and a lot of those are usually hands-on. How are we going to navigate that for the fall semester?
We spent a lot of time on finding ways to do that. Just as a lot of work right now is being done with telework, we're able to find experiences that are telework experiences. Since so much of the practice of public health is happening via telework, and we have been working also, with our accreditor to make sure that we can take alternative pathways for the applied public health so that the students are receiving an excellent experience and an experience that they will check the box and say, yes, that meets the criteria. And our faculty, I think, have been super dedicated about being willing to be online with our students. I saw an earlier question about, will I ever see my faculty member face to face? Well, yeah, because the faculty member will have access, as you will, to the ability to have meetings like this, online meetings where you do see each other face to face. You're not in the same room together, but at least you do have that ability to get to know one another. And I will tell you, in the course of this pandemic, in my work, my science work outside of this, I am now working with a number of people on projects, a couple related to COVID, one related to climate change and health that I'm doing for the National Academy of Sciences, and I've never met these people face to face, and I feel that I've gotten to know them really well. And I think that this is a skill that we all have to develop now, which is learning how to create those closer, professional relationships, whether they're mentoring relationships, faculty student relationships, relationships with colleagues. Because I think increasingly, not just during the pandemic, but in the future, we're going to be doing more work this way. I just can't believe that we're going to return to, what used to be my life, which was, flying all over the place to get to meetings where I'd go and, maybe speak for a couple of hours and shake hands with a few people and then get on another plane. I mean, what a waste of time, what a waste of fuel, not good for the environment. And I think what we've learned is that we can have incredibly meaningful interactions with online with Zoom technology, WebEx technology, similar technologies.
Dean Goldman, the classes, like the students registered for a class at a certain time. Let's say they register for a class that's at 3:10 or whatever on Thursday. That means that they will actually log in and see their professor at 3:10 on Thursday.
Generally, yes, unless the professor tells you otherwise. Yes. Now, we're trying to make sure that our professors are recording those so that if for some reason you can't make it on one date or you're ill or something, that you can pick that up at another time. But yes, mostly the delivery is going to be online live. But in some cases, there may be some recorded delivery, but the professor should be able to make that clear to you. It should be in the course syllabus.
One of the students in their class, and so they're nervous because now, if they're trying to change the time of one of their classes, it might bump into another class.
Well, that's right. I think you still have to pay attention to the course schedule. And if you have a course that's delivered live during a certain time slot, then it can't overlap with a course that's delivered live, during the same time slot. But we try to construct the schedule so that isn't happening. But it always does happen. And there are always adjustments that students need to make. And that's where I think sometimes our advisors can be really helpful, in looking for maybe an alternative schedule. There might be sometimes a course that's similar enough or meets some of the same competencies or some other way to be able to make that work for you.
All right. So some of the class will be, sorry, I'm looking for my class. A part of grading. So I know in the spring, for those of you who were here in the spring, the students were able to go to a pass-fail credit, no credit at one point. Not do that for the summer. Are there any plans or talks about doing that possibly for the future, Dean Goldman?
There has been a lot of discussion about it. I think the conclusion of that discussion has been that we don't need to go to a pass fail for fall. And what happened last spring was that it was just such a disruption. A lot of people were just completely uprooted and had to move in the middle of a semester, and the faculty had to pivot from face to face to online. As I mentioned before, some of them had never taught online before. Some of them were very good at it. Some of them, it was new for them. And so I think that this time we're well prepared. We've been heading in this direction. We've known that we might have to go to completely online really, since March. And Dean Renault can tell you, I've been telling my people every single day, be ready for anything, be ready for anything, be ready for anything, because we have known that the one thing we've known is that we can't know what this pandemic is going to do. That's the one thing that we've known, right? And so I don't think that it's going to be like spring. I don't think that there's going to be a need, for a blanket kind of pass fail thing. I can understand why, some students may feel that would be insurance against, unknown things that might happen to them. But I would say if those things are happening to you, that you need to reach out to us right away. We're here to work with you. We're here to help you. And, that would have just been impossible in the context of spring where everybody's lives were kind of, uprooted to a certain extent. But, we will take on any issues that arise one at a time. And I promise we will be there with you.
Thank you, Dean Goldman. There are other implications too, and I know that when they're making these decisions, people may want to apply to a professional school, like a med school afterwards, and they do need grades, or and also there's financial aid implications if students don't get grades. So there's a lot of every decision that's made. There's all these other things that are happening.
And I would say, especially, for any of you who are, you're preparing for a next phase of your life where it's important to you to have that special connection with your faculty, or it's important to you that you need certain kinds of work or research experiences. Please don't be shy about reaching out to us to get those things. That's what we're here to do for you. We are completely dedicated to providing that for you, whatever it takes for us to do that, pandemic notwithstanding, so please make sure that your advisor's aware, your program director is aware. We can find ways to create that. And I know that was certainly one of my anxieties when I was a student, do any of the professors even notice me? Who am I going to ask for a recommendation? When I was applying for medical school, I thought nobody even knew who I was, and that I couldn't possibly go to an important professor like Professor so-and-so for a letter, because there's no way that person would have even noticed me. And we don't want you to feel, unnoticed, or that you're a part of a crowd because you're studying online. We want to make sure that you have that opportunity to find mentors, to find people who you can connect with, to form those solid relationships that are, going to be kind of the linchpin to what you need to go to the next level, including the advice that your mentors can give you, which is, very different than what the advisors can advise. And we understand that.
Thank you, Dean Goldman. I see that someone was saying that some of the classes still have some of the classes on the schedule or in bandwidth still have a classroom associated with it. So we are going through every class and changing it to remote, except for the 1 or 2 courses that we are having on campus. So that will be changed shortly. We literally have to go through one by one, and change the location in a couple different places. So that is happening soon. Dean Goldman, we have some students who are just starting the program, right? And then I know they're like, ooh, should I start now if I can't move to DC? Right now just seems like the time to be in public health. Would you recommend just let's do this now rather than deferring it all?
I definitely recommend getting started. I don't think there's a better time to be in public health. I think that we need more people, not less, who are trained in public health. This is, I think, becoming crystal clear. I think that uh, even though this is a kind of a, like Dean Renault said, it's a rainy day in Virginia, it's kind of a rainy day at GW right now with the fact that we're going through some bad weather when it comes to the pandemic. I think we're going to come out of that, and you get started now and you'll be with us as we come out of it. And I think that you're going to have a great experience when you are enrolled with us. It's going to be a great semester, even though it's not going to be the semester we had hoped for, where we'd all be together. But I think it's going to be a great semester.
I do. So each class is maybe a little bit different, right? Depending on the professor. So sometimes they may be all like synchronized, like students are a little confused on how that will work. So when they go to their first class, their professor will lay out the expectations of, I want you here every day, every day, every Thursday at 3:10 or every other, depending on the professor's needs or
That's correct. And the professors, all have a lot of options for how they deliver in this format. They can simply lecture in real time to you and record that lecture as they're giving the lecture. They could pre-record a lecture that you then watch. They also are allowed to pull from, so some of them have been very involved with our online education and where they have created material for an online course that they give, and they're allowed to pull some of that out. Currently, actually, some of our professors already do that. And for example, if they're trying to explain something that it's very complicated and it's hard to explain using a PowerPoint, and if we created a video that explains it instead, that goes with one of their online lectures, they might choose to use that because it just might be a better way of teaching that concept to you. And then after that, then they would probably be online with you for Q&A and to discuss it. So I think you'll find out at the beginning of the term exactly what the format is going to be for that specific class, and you actually really do want to tune in on that, and as well as using the course syllabus, using the Blackboard, to keep track of what's going on. I mean, one thing I have found, I used to teach online when I was a professor at Hopkins, and using the primitive technology that we had at that time, which was nowhere as good as what we have now. But one thing I did find is that a difference for some students was that it required a little bit of extra discipline to keep pace with online material, especially if it is asynchronously delivered. That is, if the professor is saying, watch this, that I found that I needed to work with some students on scheduling a time to do that, schedule the time that you're going to do that, so that they didn't wait until the very last minute and try to binge watch everything, because it's hard to learn that way. It works kind of, for TV shows, but it doesn't work for learning complex concepts and really being able to integrate those concepts. And so, keeping pace and doing the material in the time period you're supposed to do it. Your professors are dishing it out that way because they kind of know how much people can digest at once, but also they want to achieve that integration. And so that is something, if you have not ever done anything in this format, that I would advise you to pay attention to.
Dean Goldman, can online students take residential courses now since they're offered online?
Well, they always have been able to take a certain number of their courses residentially, and as residential students are allowed to take a certain proportion of their courses online. So there is that ability to do that. and there's a limit, that just is baked into the agreement that we have with our online provider. It's the same curriculum, but sometimes it's always been the case that some students have found it easier from the standpoint of scheduling if they're a residential student to take the online course. And other students who are in the online program have found there's more variety in the residential course schedule and some ability to get into some specialized areas that they otherwise wouldn't get. What we don't want to see is students being confused now because we're delivering all of our residential curriculum in this hybrid format. When I understand that some students thought that that meant that they had to drop their courses that are delivered um, in the residential format and add the course instead as an online course. And you, A, you don't have to do that. B, we don't really want you to do that because those online courses are very full. And the residential courses are a way of helping to create a cohort for you with the program that you're a part of. And we want you to get to know the other students who are in your program and begin to develop more of a network with them. That's an important part of being at the School of Public Health. And believe me, the programs, and I know that they're going to be holding sessions to talk about this later on in August, but the programs are going to be making real efforts to help to support that network building within their individual programs so that, for example, the global health epidemiology students get to know each other, and the health policy and management students get to know each other, and and that we begin to actually see what would have happened because of the fact that the departments are in different places or they're taking slightly different courses. But I think that we might generate more camaraderie and more connectivity this way than we might sometimes have been generating just through the kind of the organic nature of people bumping into each other in the building. I think that what we're going to be doing is far more intentional, and that my guess is that we will try very hard to do community building. There's a question about if students need help for taking courses remotely. We would love to hear from any of you who are in that position ASAP. Please, I think dropping Heather a line, we definitely want to know about those issues, see if there are things that we can do to provide assistance to you or place you in an environment that is more conducive to learning. That is one of the reasons that an undergraduate can have a place in our dormitory is just having zero resources at home for being able to learn online. And that we know that there are many people in that situation, not necessarily zero, it doesn't have to be zero, but we don't want it to be such a struggle for you that it's difficult for you to make progress academically. We want to hear from you if there's any doubt in your mind about whether you're able to do that with the resources that you have.
Thank you, Dean Goldman. I put my email address up and I saw some other people who had questions about like their specific financial aid situation. So we do have a lot of students in the School of Public Health, but we want to work with each of you depending on your own circumstances. So please reach out to us and let us know if we can help. We will do everything that we can to connect you with the right resources and do what we can to make this work for you. We really want to make this work for our students. There are so many questions and a lot of them are program specific. And actually I met with the admissions team yesterday to talk about our new students coming in. We're going to be doing some more webinars, probably program specific, department specific, definitely for our incoming students. And we're also, after listening to you today, also for our current student, the returners, if you will. In addition, we are going to try to put together very quickly, actually, some online mock classes so you can see what the experience will be like before you guys get here. So we're trying to put a lot of things together very quickly to be able to hopefully relieve some of the anxiety when it comes to what online learning looks like. But again, we want to work with each of you to make this the best experience possible. Again, not an ideal experience for anybody. One thing that, but as we close, Dean Goldman, when we're looking forward to the future, I know we did survey students about their experiences in the spring, so we were able to learn a lot about how to make this even a better experience for the online program. So I feel like, can you talk a little bit about how the students' input is really influencing how the class experience will be held?
Well, yes, it is incredibly important to us. And one of the things that we have learned actually through our online program is how we can receive much more immediate feedback about how things are going when we actually have the students online. And I want to encourage you as we're going through the semester at every turn when we ask you for feedback to please participate and provide that feedback because that is the only way that we know what's working for you and what's not working for you. I would say that actually the results of the survey from last spring were very positive, and I think the students were quite complimentary about the overall quality. However, I think they were also giving us bonus points because I think they understood that it was a challenge to do the pivot that we had to do like right in the middle of the semester. And so, some of the comments were, considering how hard that was, it was great. And our commitment is for fall that you will not have that caveat, no considering how hard it was, because we have had the time to prepare. And I think that even though I in spring our students were able, I know, to learn. I know they were able to address the competencies. I felt that it was extremely successful as an educational experience. I also want it to feel very seamless. I want it to feel smooth. I want you to feel that there's some real polish on what we're delivering to you. And I think that that's what we've been able to achieve. But I encourage you to be as critical as you want to be because the extent to which you're giving us that feedback, the earlier you give it, the better. We have the capacity to bring in help. We have master teachers in the School of Public Health have been who can be roped in. We have people who are tech experts who can be roped in. We have access to people in the library who are experts. And, if there's anything where it just doesn't look like it meets our standards, which are very, very high, I want you to let us know.
Coleman, thank you so much for your time, and students, thank you for your time. I know, we got the announcement on Monday. It was a lot to process. I said to myself, I'm going to be in this room for like another 5 months. Oh my goodness. And we are trying our best to listen to everybody and trying our best to keep the safety of everyone as our top priority. But we will be doing many more of these because there's clearly a ton of questions. I did not get to everybody. I will print out the chat and try to get to people as best we can over the next couple of days. But we want to make sure you are comfortable and happy and be successful public health leaders. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all so much and have a very wonderful weekend. Thank you.